Hi, my name is Aaron Plaza. I'm the superintendent at Bennington Public Schools. We know that life can get busy and not everybody is going to be able to attend the community meetings that were offered on the bond issue that will take place on March 11th. And so we also want to provide this virtual presentation with the same information that was given during the community presentations. We want to begin by providing a summary of all the information. We'll then dig into each one of these topics moving forward. The total bond issue would be for $112 million. That is a $7 million reduction from the 2024 bond. The total project cost, just over $124.5 million, which is just under a $4 million reduction from the previous bond issue. The timeline is for the building to open in 2028-29, which is 1 year delayed from the previous one. And the levy impact will have the tax rate increase of 0.0 cents. The previous bond issue had a 4.9 cent increase. This one has no tax rate increase. Anytime you have a large project like this, it's always best to have some goals. And so our boards put together 3 goals associated with this project. The first one is to ensure that there are fairness between the buildings. We want every kid that goes to BPS in the high school setting to have the same opportunities within those facilities. The second one is the levy impact. We realize as a district that we have a high levy and we want to ensure that our education remains as affordable as possible for everybody. And the third is to have long-term sustainability of the buildings. This decision that we're making is a 50 to 100-year decision. And so we also want to make sure that we're able to put together a building that our community can be proud of for decades to come. Let's begin with why this project is needed. The enrollment of the high school continues to grow. Our total high school capacity is 1,150 students. As you can see, this year we have 1,081 students. We are at 94% capacity. On the left, what you're going to see is a chart as if we didn't have a single student move into Bennington Public Schools moving forward. And so we're calling that the no growth chart. So in 2028-29, as you look down on the red row, that would be our current 5th through 8th grade students. If we did not have a single student that moved into the district between now and 28-29, we expect 1,369 students in the high school or to be at 119% capacity. The chart on the right represents historical growth. Typically, between the elementary and middle school settings, we see a 5 to 8% increase in our student population. If that continued to take place, the chart on the right would reflect that, and it would show a high school enrollment in 28-29 of 1,518 students, which would be at 132% of capacity. Looking at both of these charts, we know that moving forward, we have 5 elementaries that have been built that have high capacity rates for students. We have 2 middle schools, and all of those are filtering into our high school that has a current capacity limit of 1,150 students. One thing that we've heard throughout this process is, especially from our parents that are in the elementary age, is that this is really for the high school students and maybe the middle school students. But anytime that you have a construction project of this magnitude, it takes almost 4 years to construct. And so it really is for all students that are within our BPS community. And so we just wanted to outline what that would look like and which grades would be in high school throughout the first few years of the school actually being developed. And so on the left is year 1, that'd be 2028-29. That'd be current 5th through 8th grade students. By 2033-34, which would be the 6th year of the building being open, every student within Bennington Public Schools today would have gone through one of our 2 high schools because kindergartners would be freshmen that year. You can see by the chart up there, we go from 1,518 students in year 1 to 1,941 students in year 6, and our building capacity is 1,150 students. One theme that you're going to see throughout this presentation is from feedback to progress. Throughout the course of the 2 bond failures that we had in 2022 and 2024, we have surveyed our community to learn more about what our community is asking us to do as it relates to the bond issue. Several surveys went out, including 3 after the failure of the 2024 bond issue. What we needed to know was exactly what our community was looking for within the bond issue proposal so we could address each of those areas. And so often you're going to hear me reference the surveys from our community and then how we implemented or reacted to that information. We're going to begin with the scope of the project. The proposed high school would sit at 180th and Military. The first thing that we'd have to do is take care of the infrastructure, which is the paving of 180th. Currently, there's gravel on 180th Street for a stretch there. Part of this project would be to pave that 180th Street. In addition, we'd have to prep the site. We are not developing the north part of the property. This would only be the south part, which would house the proposed high school. The core of the facility, we have up there 1,000 student capacity and 1,500 student capacity. The core of the facility, so the cafeteria, the hallway, the number of restrooms, the collaborative spaces, the offices, those core areas will be built for 1,500 students. We will only have enough classrooms and parking available for 1,000 students. And so on opening day, the capacity of the building would be 1,000 and it would be able to be expanded to 1,500 students. You can see in the wings of the high school, this would be where the classrooms would be located. There'd be 26 classrooms, including special education, science labs, flex areas, visual arts, and business, along with the standards of media center counseling. And then we would also have common teacher plan spaces. One area that we wanted to highlight was the career and technical education portions of the building. We saw an opportunity. We currently have within Bennington High School a construction trades courses, drafting courses, and then we're in the process of developing an education pathway. Our option, as we looked at fairness between the buildings, was to construct the building with the exact same options for students. But instead of doing that, we found an opportunity where we could actually increase our career and technical education offerings within the new building. And so the proposed high school would have a small engines lab and a welding lab, and then it would also have a health sciences pathway. Those students that go to Bennington High School that would have interest in high school number two, whether it was small engines, welding, or health science, would be able to go to that building to take those courses, and vice versa. Those in the proposed high school would be able to go to Bennington High School as well. And so by constructing the same area, we've also been able to double our career and technical education offerings for students. In addition to that, knowing that we would be able to have a small engines and a welding lab, that will open up our opportunities to have more programming partnerships between buildings. We could seek public and private partnerships and also potentially expand our partnership with Metro Community College. We're really excited about the expanded curriculum offerings and then seeking out additional partnerships. In addition to the building, it would have an auditorium that would be just slightly bigger than the one that is at Bennington High School due to the fact that the capacity limits of the proposed school is larger than Bennington High School, and a instrumental music classrooms. There are physical education and extracurricular spaces within the project as well, including gyms, a track, weight room, and locker rooms. One item that we did want to highlight is that the varsity contest will continue to take place at Badger Stadium. There's been a belief that within this project there would be a competition stadium at the new school, or we'd host football or band competitions there, and that is not what we are planning to do. Badger Stadium, while it currently hits capacity often, we know that the parking is an issue there, and it is at capacity, and it's really hard to get into. If we did split schools, we obviously, in some ways, would split part of those crowds, which would ease that congestion. Currently, Elkhorn, Millard, Lincoln, and several other schools share their varsity competition stadiums. Bennington would do the exact same. So we would continue to have football games, our band invitational, our track meet, all of our other contests that generate large amounts of people at the same time. They would continue to be at Badger Stadium. The new proposed high school does not include a competition stadium. It does include a lower level stadium that would allow us to continue to have practices, lower level events, band practices in the morning, everything that those at Bennington High School have as well. One thing that we've heard throughout the course of this, throughout the surveys, is please don't build the Taj Mahal. Please build a building that is fiscally responsible. And so we set out to do that. We wanted to look at other area schools that have been recently constructed within the Omaha Metro and what those look like in size. So throughout the course of the process for this bond issue from 2022 to 2024 to 2025, we have reduced the square footage down to 240,000 square feet. By a look around the metro, you can see Elkhorn North is at 265, Buena Vista is at 285, and Gretna East is at 365,000 square feet. And so, by comparison, we know that our building would be smaller than each of these recently constructed buildings that have similar capacities. In addition to that, it's not just the size of the building, it's also how it is constructed. And so we are currently looking at the proposed high school number two with a square footage estimate of $408 a square foot. We did an analysis of each of those buildings that we previously looked at of how much they paid per square foot and what that would be if they were going to market today. And so Elkhorn North was at $263 a square foot. Adjusted for inflation, it's now at $480. Gretna East was at $315 a square foot. Adjusted for inflation, that would now be $454, while Buena Vista at $265 would now be $402. And so when we looked through this process, it wasn't just about the size of the building, it was also about the efficiencies within it. And we feel like we've been fiscally responsible trying to listen to our community and provide a plan that could be supported. When you construct a high school, it is a long process. And so we are looking at 7 months after the approval for plating and certification. This would be done through Douglas County, the city of Omaha, the city of Bennington. In order to erect a high school, you have to ensure that you have the plating and certification associated with it, and that takes 7 months. Hausman Construction is our construction management at-risk firm. They anticipate 34 months for construction. That would be 31 of construction and the assumption of 3 months of winter conditions, knowing that this project spans through two separate winters. With that, we believe that we would be able to open the building in June or July of 2028 in time for the 2028-2029 school year. Cost of the project. To be really transparent about the cost of the project, we've broken it down into 7 areas. The first one is the construction cost, which we'll talk more about later, but it is just over $97.5 million for construction. Equipment, furniture, and technology. This would include pulling the wires into the building, all of the technology that we would have in there, furniture, etc., is just under $8 million. The architect and engineering fees are just over $5 million. The infrastructure, this would both be within the facility or within the scope of the project, and also the paving of the gravel on 180th Street is planned to be $7.5 million. The jurisdictional utility fees are $2.3 million. General expenses of $700,000 and a design contingency at 3.5%, which would be just under $3.5 million. All in, the total project cost is $124,645,829. Keep in mind the total cost of the bond issue is $112 million, with the district providing a $12.5 million of district reserves to help offset the cost. Wanted to provide some information about how we reduced the construction price down almost $2 million from the previous bond issue. Previously in 2024, we had projected for the construction cost to be $99.5 million. After the bond failed, we went back to the drawing board. We looked at our surveys. We tried to assess how to reduce our construction costs. At that time, we also provided some more detail. Inflation comes in. The new construction cost was $106 million. So our $100 million project became $106 million. From that point forward, we cut $8.5 million. We did that through 41 value engineering cuts, including reducing 12,000 square feet. We looked at material changes. If there was a place that was brick that we could turn into drywall, or if there was a type of material that we were able to get a more cost-effective product, we looked through every square inch of the project to see where we could make value engineering cuts. We also reduced the parking by 300 stalls. And then we heard from our community, put less emphasis on the activity facilities. And so every activity facility had a reduction in scope, seating, and the amenities as well. After all of those cuts, we get to the new construction cost of just over $97.5 million. Our bond information. This would be a voter-approved tax-exempt general obligation bond that would last 21 years for $112 million. We are estimating a true interest cost of 4.15%, but we anticipate the tax rate increase to be 0%. So the levy impact would be 0.0 cents. And then there would be further opportunities for levy reduction after 7 years. The differences between 2024 and 2025, the bond has gone down $7 million. The levy impact has gone down 4.9 cents, and so it'd be no tax rate increase. The length of the bond proposal has reduced by 1 year. The interest rate has reduced by 0.7%. The principal payments will be made within 3 to 5 years, so that is the same as the previous one. The lowest our bond reserve would ever be is just at $5.7 million, but we did increase the district funds used or the district reserve funds used by just over $3 million. Community feedback. We have sent out multiple surveys between 2022, 2024, and then leading up to this 2025 bond. We want to make sure that we truly understand the desires of our community so we could react to those and work over the plan to something that our community could support. One thing was constant throughout each one of those surveys, and that is that 68 to 72% of our community has told us that they support the construction of a second high school. Knowing that 68 to 72% of our community supports construction of a second high school, but we failed two bond issues, that's told us that our plan was not the one that they supported, but they still support the construction of a second high school. And so through each of those surveys, we looked for themes and we found three of them. The first one we heard from our community is lower the levy impact. The second one, decrease the bond debt. And the third one, communicate more effectively. And so we want to dig into each one of those areas and provide information of how we've addressed each of them. Lower the levy impact. We have put together a graph that shows what our bond and QC-PUF levy has been over the last 10 years. As you can see, typically our bond levy has been about 38 cents. We were lucky enough 2 years ago to be able to lower the levy by 1.8 cents. After doing financial analysis with D.A. Davidson, we know we can keep the levy at 35.8 cents for the next 7 years if this bond were to be approved. As you can see, at 35.8 cents through 2031, and in 2032 it reduces to 32, and then by 2033 it would reduce to 27 cents or an 8-cent decrease. We have multiple bonds that are coming off the rolls in 2031, which then relieves the financial pressure and allows us to make different decisions as a school district. At that time, we're either able to handle any future growth that might need capital. We could reduce our bond debt by keeping the levy up and paying bond debt faster, or we'd be able to reduce the levy. We often get asked the question, how did the levy impact go exactly from 4.9 cents down to 0.0 cents over the course of the year? Listening to our community and hearing from them to lower the levy impact, we made 3 district financial management decisions over the course of the last year. The first one, we lowered the project cost. As the project cost lowered by $4 million, we always knew that it was a 7-year increase within our levy. So in 2024, when we were saying the levy increase was going to be 4.9 cents, that was for 8 years. It was 7 years now, but that was for 8 years at the time to get to 2032. And we had multiple bonds that fall off the rolls, which would then allow us additional financial flexibility. And so really we needed to make district financial decisions that targeted that 7-year period. So the first one, we lowered the project cost by $4 million. The second one, we increased the district reserves into the project by $3 million. That helped relieve some of that pressure during the 7-year period as well. Then the third thing we've heard from our community is pay down bond debt faster. 1 year ago, the board approved $4 million of early payments on bonds. In 2025, they approved another $2 million of bond debt. And this wasn't just paying down $2 million of bond debt. It was also targeted during the 7-year period to relieve some of our pressure. And so those were the 3 district financial management decisions that were made to try to reduce the levy as our community has asked us to do. In addition, we had 2 economic factors break our way. The first one was the projected interest rate decreased by 27 basis points. There is reason to believe the interest rates over the next 3 years may continue to have some downward pressure, but we have not modeled those in. We have a very conservative model that is showing the interest rate decrease by 0.27%, but we are hopeful that maybe there will be even further interest rate reductions over the next 3 years as bonds were paid. So that was the first economic factor that kind of broke in the district's way. The second one is a year ago, we were projecting valuation increases within the district at 9%. They actually came in at 10%, which helped the model as well. So really, there were five things that were done within the control of the district and also some economic factors that moved the levy from a 4.9% increase to a 0.0 cent no tax rate increase. Within the model, it shows that we would anticipate a valuation increase of the first 5 years at 9%, the next 5 years at 7%, and then the remaining years at 5%. We want to make sure that everybody understands that that does not mean current home valuations need to go up by 9% or that there will be an increase of taxes for our homeowners at 9%. This is a combination that has modest increase on existing homes, and then incorporates the growth that's happening within our community. And so when we talk about 9, 7, and 5% increase, we want to put some data to that as well. Over the last 10 years, our valuation increases have averaged 12.48%. And so you're able to see on the graph what those have looked like each of the years. When it comes to growth of valuation within our school district, in 2023, if we had not a single increase on any current home and all we had was the growth that came into the district, our valuations would have went up 8.22%. In 2024, again, if current homes had absolutely no increase in valuation to them, our total growth within the district would have been 7.5%. Higher interest rates obviously have caught up to everybody in 2025. The growth within the district was still at 3%. And so when we say 9% valuation increase, we are planning on growth within the district in addition to just modest increases on existing homes. In order to continue to make the payments as we've said that we can with no tax rate increase, we would have to have a 6.15% increase every year for 7 consecutive years, and we would still be able to make our payments in 2032 when we were able to potentially decrease the levy. For context, a 6.5% increase would be the lowest increase that we've had in multiple decades. The lowest increase that you can see here since 2015 is 7.28%. So we would have to have the lowest valuation increase that we've had, and it would have to happen for 7 consecutive years. This is how we feel confident through our modeling that we know that we can continue to make these payments into the future with exactly the tax levy that we have set at 35.8 cents. As a reminder, when property taxes are levied, school districts average in Bennington about 52% of the total. Oftentimes, there's a belief that when you pay property taxes, those are all going to the school. The schools in Bennington typically receive about 52%. It could be more, it could be less, depending on if you have an SID, if you live in the city, or what exactly your living arrangements are, but the average is about 52%. Decrease bond debt. We have heard from our community the desire to decrease our bond debt. For historical perspective, there have been 6 bond issues that have been passed at Bennington Public Schools over the last 20 years for a total of $198 million. To begin the 24-25 school year, we had just over $165 million in outstanding debt. The good part of Bennington's bond debt is that over the next several years, we are going to be paying larger chunks of principal moving forward. So much so that over the next 5 years, we anticipate paying just under $30 million of bond debt. Over the next 10 years, we're going to pay just under $66 million of bond debt. But beyond just those scheduled payments, which are going to have larger principal payments, our board has made a concentrated effort to hear our community saying reduce the bond debt. And so there have been multiple early repayments over the last 2 years. In 2023-24, $4 million of bond debt was repaid early. And in 2024-25, $2 million of bond debt was repaid early as well. What you see on the screen are just our scheduled payments. Our district has made a commitment to paying bond debt off early over the last 2 years, and if fiscally possible, we plan to continue that into the future. To show that the district is in a position to also make our bond payments, we've put together this slide. The bar is on the green. It's the revenue. That is the amount that we anticipate to receive within the district at our 35.8 cent levy. The blue part is our current district reserves within our bond fund. The red line is the payments that we would be making both with current bond payments and future bond payments if the high school was approved. As you can see, there is a gap between the red line and the top of the bar. The lowest point that we would see within this analysis is a reserve in the bond fund of 5.8 million. If you look at the black line in the middle of the graph, you'll see the levy reduces 3 cents in 2032 and another 5 cents in 2033. This is the point that we know not only are we able to make our payments, we have multiple bonds that are falling off the rolls, and we can make decisions on what to do within that fund as well. The third thing that we've heard from our community is communicate more effectively. So we wanted to outline the several ways that we are trying to communicate this bond issue. The one that I want to spend a little bit of time on is our direct mailings. Through our surveys, what we've heard from our community is that our community wants to receive direct mailings. These would be items that would show up in the mailbox, providing information on the bond issue. And so the district plans to have 3 or more mailings that will show up to every patron within the district with information on the bond issue. This is us listening to our community of how they want information and trying to provide it that way. In addition, we have several sections on our website that are providing all the information. We've hosted 3 community presentations in addition to this virtual presentation, provided signs and flyers within our community. We're trying to provide information on Facebook and other social media locations, and then also partner with our local media between the Bennington Herald, the World Herald, and local news stations to get the word out so everybody feels informed come March 11th when they make their vote. So, in conclusion, on our community feedback, we have continued to hear from our patrons that almost 70% of our patrons support the construction of a second high school, but there are 3 areas that they wanted us to work on. First one was lower the levy impact, and so we have done that. The tax rate increase has decreased from 4.9 cents down to 0 cent tax rate increase. We've heard decrease the bond debt. Our board's made a commitment to that, and over the course of the last 12 months has paid off $6 million of bond debt early, which has not saved interest for our patrons and also decreased our debt. The third is communicate more effectively. And so through the feedback surveys, our community meetings, mailers, social media, signs, TV, and the website, we're doing our best to communicate all the information so everybody feels informed come March 11th. During the 2024 bond, we talked about the accommodations if a bond were not to pass. It showed a slide that had modulars around Bennington High School and then where a second parking lot or an additional parking lot would have to be put in. That is the end result if we are not able to pass a bond. But what I didn't do a great job was showing the accommodations that we need to make before that becomes a reality. And so when we provided Plan B last time, we didn't provide how the steps and the number of years it was going to take to get there. And so this time we wanted to make sure we outlined our best guess on what each year is going to look like for Bennington High School moving forward. Each of these accommodations will need to take place at Bennington High School, just knowing that we are going to be moving over capacity, even if no students move into the district over the next several years. The first one is we're going to have to limit registrations, especially within our elective classes. There are only so many labs. When you have a lab, there are only so many places that a student can go into. There are only so many students that can get into a weights class before it does not become safe anymore. There are so many ovens available within our family consumer science courses that students are not able to register within those classes. So we understand that our electives are at risk of being limited or not offered moving forward just based on the constraints of the building. The second is our traveling teachers. We have four teachers currently at Bennington High School that do not have a classroom. So they don't come in and go to their classroom and stay there where the kids come to them each day. Instead, they travel throughout the course of the day. And so their first period class is in somebody's room that has a first period plan. And then they put their materials on a cart. They go to somebody else's class and they do that second period. And they do that 8 periods throughout the course of the day. Every teacher that Bennington High School hires moving forward will have to be a traveling teacher. The third thing that we know we're going to have to look at moving forward is parking. The parking at Bennington High School is we actually in December handed out the last parking tag available. And so all freshmen as of January 2025 will now have to park at Bennington Middle School, and then they'll have to walk over to the high school. This is with 1,081 students in the high school, knowing if not a single student moves into the district over the next 4 years in 2028-29, we're going to have to start limiting freshmen and sophomores as well. Currently, seniors are allowed to leave the building and take early release for up to 4 periods. Juniors are allowed to leave the building for up to 1 period for early release. We also understand that participation rates are going to probably decrease. The number of teams that are going to have tryouts or cut is also going to have to increase over the coming years. And then finally, we're going to eventually have to look at temporary structures such as modular classrooms outside of the building just to accommodate our class sizes. This chart shows how each of those areas is going to be impacted over the next 4 years. And so you can see the number of sections that are at capacity moving forward, the number of elective courses we believe are at risk of being limited or not offered, our projected number of teachers that will be traveling over the next 4 years, the amount of parking that would be available, what early release could look like for juniors and seniors, what cuts and potential limits to our activities are going to take place for our students, and then when modulars could potentially be utilized. We are hopeful through these modifications and accommodations, we can get to 2026-27 before we'd have to look at providing a modular. A note that modulars cost about $500,000 to put in. And so between the foundation, the permits, the moving of the structure, and the hooking up of all the utilities, we know that every modular that we'd have to put down is essentially $500,000. That $500,000 would eat at the amount of reserves that we'd be able to put towards the project. And so we're doing the best we can not to put those in place until we have to. Now is the time to vote. If you are registered to vote, but you have changed your address since the 2024 election, you will need to go and re-register online. That can happen at the website that is provided to you, and everybody is eligible to register to vote up until February 21st. If you miss the February 21st deadline for the online registration, but you still like to vote, you could do that in person up until February 28th at the Douglas County Election Commissioner's office. If you're not registered by February 28th, you are not going to be eligible to vote. The voting process is really 3 steps, and the first one is a new one. In order to vote, you must write down your driver's license or state ID number on the ballot return envelope before you put it into the mail or you take it back. We did not have to do this in 2024, but that did take place for those that did early ballots in the general election in 2024. So once you write down your driver's license or your state ID number, you then must sign the back of the envelope, and then you have 2 options. You can put a stamp on it and you can mail it in. If you're going to do that, we advise doing that by March 4th, which is 7 days prior to the election. Or you can drop your envelope off at a ballot box, which are located all the way throughout the Omaha Metro. We did provide the addresses for the 4 closest ballot boxes to Bennington. By March 11th, that is official election day, all ballots must be in the hands of the election office by 5 p.m. on March 11th, or they will not count. If you put it in the ballot box at 5:01, it doesn't count. If the mail is not received by them by 5 p.m. on March 11th, it does not count. And so you'll want to make sure your ballot is provided to Douglas County Election Commissioner through one of those options by 5 p.m. on March 11th. Throughout our presentations, we've had several common questions that we also wanted to address. The first one was, please place less emphasis on athletic facilities. And so All athletic facilities in this proposal have been reduced. There is often a belief that there are upgrades to the current football stadium, and those are not included. Badger Stadium does not have any upgrades within this bond proposal. What it is today is what it would be if it was approved. The new high school does not have a football stadium included. It has a lower level practice stadium that can be used for lower level contests as well. Both high schools will share the current stadium for varsity contest. The second thing that we've heard is, can we just expand the current high school? Unfortunately, we are not able to expand the current high school. The core facilities, the cafeterias, the hallways, the number of restrooms, those aren't large enough to accommodate beyond the 1,150 students. We could potentially look at expanding those core areas on the outside of the building, but if we did that, then we would have to remodel the inside of the building within those areas. And by the time it was completed, it would cost fairly close to what a new building is, and it also would be at capacity on day one. And so that expansion isn't really an option. There's also been questions of if we would be able to build up to a third story. The foundation and the structure of the building, that is not possible to add additional floors going up. Another item that we've heard is that we need more commercial and infrastructure growth prior to a second high school. Bennington Public Schools is not within the control of what commercial infrastructure there is or the roads and how those get put in. And so we want to be a great partner, and we will be a great partner with the city of Bennington and Douglas County and our developers and any commercial industry that would like to come in, but it is not within our control to do so. We have seen some positive movement within our valuations for commercial. Over the last several years, typically our commercial valuation has been 3 to 4% of our total valuation. This year, it did jump up to 6%. And so we are seeing more businesses move in, more commercial, which will increase our tax base and continue to help our entire school system. Another question that we've heard is, or statement is that there are too many high schools that are too close together. We did an analysis to look at this, and Bennington High School and the proposed high school number two would be 2.3 miles apart. The average distance for schools, districts that have two or three high schools, is about 3.6 miles. There are 6 high schools that are within 3 miles of each other, and 67 schools that are within 3 miles of each other in the metro alone. And so while they are closer, that has helped us on the programming side, as we would be able to have students travel for the career and technical education side of it. We also know that we're close to the averages within the Omaha metro as far as distance between schools. Another item that we've been asked is, why is it going to take 3 to 5 years to start paying principal? The district has structured the bond payments to be conservative, but also flexible with lower initial payments just to ensure our financial stability. The principal can always be paid earlier. Our district has shown and our board has shown over the last couple of years that they have paid off bonds early, and they can also do that if they need to over the next couple of years. But we also wanted to make sure that we were conservative and flexible between now and 2032 to keep that tax rate increase at zero. Another item that we've heard is our developers need to pay more for the upfront costs on the new developments. That unfortunately is not within Bennington Public Schools' control. State statutes dictate how developments are paid for, the infrastructure is paid for, and Bennington Public Schools is not able to control how much developers pay towards infrastructure. With that, we come back to the end and just kind of a review and a summary of the proposal. It would be a $112 million bond issue with a total project cost of $124,645,829. The timeline is for the building to open in 2028-29, and then our tax rate increase would be 0.0 cents. Thank you very much for tuning in, and go Badgers.